Well, shalom, y'all. We are so glad you have joined us for this week's teaching. We're going to be continuing our series on Joseph, and we're going to be in part 3 this week. Just kind of a recap of what we have talked about so far when it comes to Joseph. First, we talked about how Joseph was given a dream. And when Joseph was given that dream, Joseph did not really have a full understanding of what was going to be coming his way in order for this dream to be fulfilled in his life. But he was given this dream to give him fuel because he was going to have to go through some things. He was going to have to be positioned in some places that were not the greatest places to be, that were going to be some dark and lonely places. But this dream was there to give him fuel, to stay faithful in who he was and the person he was to be, and not to give in to the surroundings that he was in and the darkness that he was in at those moments, and not to give up hope, not to give up who he was, and staying faithful and staying righteous and doing that which was right. And we talked about last week about how he remained faithful, how he was blessed and favored, and how when he went into Potiphar's house, because of his faithfulness and because of the blessing that was upon him, he was quickly elevated to be pretty much the head over Potiphar's house, where Potiphar put him in charge of pretty much everything in his house. And upon falsely being accused in Potiphar's house, he is thrown into prison, into the jail. And Joseph remains faithful even at that moment. And he stays faithful to who he is. And he is quickly elevated. The blessing is still with him there in the jail, and he is elevated to the point where he is placed in charge of the jail as well. So Joseph has gone through these things, and when we're going to get to, and we're going to talk to here in part 3, is he is in jail and he is still being faithful, and we're going to see how Joseph remaining faithful and not giving into his circumstances puts him in a position to have his dream fulfilled. And at this moment in time, Joseph still doesn't fully understand his dream. He doesn't fully understand what is coming and what has to happen in order for this dream to be fulfilled. He just needs to remain faithful. And it teaches us so much, and it shows us so much of what we need to be focused upon in our life on a daily basis, and that is focusing upon doing that which is right, that which is righteous, focus upon being a faithful person, focusing upon being what he has called us to be, and not focusing upon the darkness that is around us, focusing upon the circumstances around us, and not giving in to what we believe how things should go. Because if Joseph had fallen into this concept of this is how it should have went, or this is what should occur, he could have easily said, me being a slave in Potiphar's house is not how it should go. And he could have gotten bitter over it, and he could have gotten angry over it, and he could have lost confidence and faith in the dream because of that. He could have had that same approach when he was falsely accused and then thrown in the jail. But Joseph doesn't take that approach. Instead, he holds on to the dream. He continues to believe in the dream and have confidence in the dream and stay faithful to who he is and to doing that which is right. So let's dive into our scripture here for this week. It is going to be Genesis chapter 40, and we're going to start with verse 5. It says, "Then the cupbearer and the baker for the king of Egypt, who were confined in jail, both had a dream the same night, each man with his own dream. and each dream with its own interpretation. Now Joseph came to them in the morning and saw them, and behold, they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were with him in confinement in his master's house, saying, "Why are your faces so sad today?" Then they said to him, "We have had a dream, and there is no one to interpret it." Then Joseph said to him, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Recount it to me, please." So this is interesting. Joseph, who had dreamed a dream, he interpreted his dream, and he interpreted and saw that his family would bow down to him. And at this moment, upon asking these men to tell him their dream so he could interpret it, saying, "Look, it's not me who's doing it, but it is God, and I will recount what your dream means unto you." Joseph knew the meaning of his dream. I just believe Joseph didn't know how it was going to play out. So he knew it was going to happen, and he had confidence in it. And so here he is in a jail, and he could be bitter over the fact that he had this dream, and he has confidence in his dream to come to pass, but everything seems to be moving in the opposite direction of that dream coming true, and now somebody else has a dream. If Joseph would have been in a state of bitterness, and I believe this, over how his life is going, and if he would have been feeling sorry for himself, I don't think Joseph would have been so ready to interpret their dream. They don't even ask him to. He sees something's wrong. He asks them, and they tell him about this dream. And he's like, "Well, hey, let me interpret it for you." He is staying faithful to who he is. And we see here that Joseph has a gift to interpret these dreams. And it is the gift that Joseph has that is ultimately going to put Joseph in the position for his dream to be fulfilled. But his dream being fulfilled, the purpose of it, it isn't just for Joseph to have this dream and to have it fulfilled. It isn't for the purpose of his family bowing down to him. It's for the purpose that Joseph has found favor in God's eyes. He has shown himself to be a person who is faithful, who can go through what is necessary to go through to be positioned where he needs to be positioned so that he can save his family during the famine. And the dream is a tool which is given unto him to give him confidence and faith as he has to go through these dark times and be positioned in these places that aren't the greatest place to be positioned in. So his gift that has been given unto him is now going to begin to make room unto Joseph, and Joseph is remaining faithful to his gift and to being faithful and doing that which is right. So Joseph goes on to interpret the dreams of these two men. One of them is going to be restored and have favor again with Pharaoh. And he is going to begin to serve Pharaoh again. The other one is not going to have such a favorable outcome. He is going to be put to death. He is going to be hung. Okay, so Joseph correctly interprets these dreams, and the way he interprets them, they correctly come to pass just as he said they would. And Joseph, upon doing this, sees an opportunity that maybe this guy can go before Pharaoh and he can get favor before Pharaoh because he interpreted this man's dreams and he can be let out. But see, here is where we can kind of see where Joseph isn't quite understanding the process. Because let's look at verse 14. "Only remember me when it goes well with you, And please show me loving kindness by remembering me to Pharaoh and getting me out of this house. So Joseph's motivation and his goal at this moment is just getting out. He wants to be free. That is what he's thinking about. But he is not there for the purpose of just getting out. He is there for a purpose, for a certain time. And I believe that this story with the cupbearer and the baker, God is putting these things in play and in action so that his plan can unfold. And so all this is playing out. And at this moment in time, Joseph isn't quite picking up on the details of how things are going and how they're going to play out. He is not catching yet that the reason he is there is because there is a certain moment in time when he is to stand before Pharaoh. And it's got to be at that moment in time. And at this moment in time, when this dream is given to the cupbearer and the baker, it is not yet time for Joseph to stand before Pharaoh. That time is going to come later. But if you think about how Joseph can be feeling in this moment, he has been waiting to get out of captivity, to get out of this dark place. And he has confidence that this dream is going to come to pass in his life. He may not understand how and why, and his focus may be, in order for this dream to come to pass, I need this to happen, and he's trying to get that to happen. But the plan, and God's plan, was for it to happen a different way, and he needs it to happen a different way. So he asked him, remember me before you go to Pharaoh, when you go to Pharaoh, so you can get me out of here. Now let's look at verse 23. It says, yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. So here Joseph has done what is right, and he has remained faithful, and he used his gift to interpret the dream of the cupbearer. But yet he asked him, remember me before Pharaoh, when you go into Pharaoh, that I may get out of this house. But yet the cupbearer forgets about Joseph. And we're going to see here, it's 2 years that Joseph is waiting in this prison upon interpreting this dream. So he has to wait another 2 years. He has to remain faithful. He has to remain patient in doing that which is good. Enduring and doing that which is good. Enduring and being a faithful servant. And not giving in to the darkness that is around him. Not giving in to the circumstances that are around him. Not giving in to the temptation of wanting to give in to bitterness or unforgiveness, or falling into the trap of this is not how things should be going. Not giving in to doubt and beginning to doubt whether or not this dream would ever come to pass, but holding on and standing firm in confidence and in faith and expecting the dream to be fulfilled in his life. So let's look at Genesis 41 and verse 1. It says, now it happened at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh had a dream, and behold, he was standing by the Nile. Okay, so 2 years has passed. Joseph is remaining to be faithful in the prison, and we're going to see that here in a bit, because he is ready to interpret yet another dream. Now the time has come for Joseph to do what he has been positioned to do. And I also believe that not only The two men being there for him to interpret the dream is putting into play for this story here to happen, but it's also a test unto Joseph to see, are you still going to be faithful? Are you going to interpret another man's dream when your dream has not been fulfilled? Are you willing to bless somebody else when you have not yet received your blessing? Are you going to hope for somebody's dream, for somebody's prayer to be answered before your prayer is answered? He's testing the character of Joseph. And now Joseph is going to get the opportunity, because when he was tested, he was shown to be pure. He was shown to be righteous, doing that which was right. Now let's look at verse 9. Then the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh, saying, I would bring to remembrance today my own offenses. Pharaoh was furious with his servants, and he put me in confinement in the house of the captain of the bodyguard, both me and the chief baker. And when we had a dream on the same night, he and I, each of us dreamed according to the interpretation of his own dream. Now there was with us a Hebrew youth, a slave of the captain of the bodyguard, and we recounted them to him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. To each one he interpreted according to his own dream. And just as he interpreted for us, so it happened. He restored me in my office, but he hanged him. Then Pharaoh sent and called for Joseph, and they rushed him out of the pit. And he shaved himself, and he changed his clothes, and he came to Pharaoh. So here we see that Joseph's willingness to interpret the dream of the cupbearer is what brings Joseph before Pharaoh. It was him remaining faithful to his gift and being willing to offer his gift, to be willing to bless the cupbearer when he hadn't received his blessing yet, that sets him up to be put in a position for him to receive his blessing. If Joseph had chosen not to interpret the cupbearer's dream, would he have been given the opportunity to stand before Pharaoh? Because the cupbearer is a one who goes before Pharaoh and says, you have to call for this young Hebrew slave. He can interpret your dream. And so that's what Pharaoh does. Pharaoh calls for Joseph. Joseph has been positioned, and he has gone through all these steps so that he would be at that place, at that moment in time, for Pharaoh to call Joseph unto himself. And Joseph gets himself ready. He shaves and changes his clothes. It appears that Joseph goes before Pharaoh, not appearing as a Hebrew, but probably appearing more as an Egyptian. And that is how Joseph looks when his brothers come to see him. Now, we don't know if this is Joseph's attempt to try to gain favor with Pharaoh and not be rejected by Pharaoh. But the ultimate thing that elevates Joseph is the fact that he is able to interpret Pharaoh's dream. And when Pharaoh asked him to interpret his dream, Joseph's response is here in verse 16. Joseph then answered Pharaoh, saying, "It is not in me," God will answer, "concerning the welfare of Pharaoh." The gift that God has given me, it is the gift that he has given me. He is showing me what the interpretation of this dream is, and I will interpret it for you. Of all the disappointments that Joseph has experienced along this journey, he continues to do what is right. And in continuing to do what is right, he chooses to interpret Pharaoh's dream. He doesn't give up in doing that which is right. And upon this time of remaining faithful, he now is elevated out of being a slave. And Pharaoh looks at him, because Joseph's interpretation to Pharaoh is, he's like, look, you're getting 7 years of abundance, and then you're going to have 7 years of famine. So that was the dream. So Joseph interprets the dream. But then we see Joseph's wisdom, because he doesn't just leave it at interpreting the dream. He goes on to say, get a wise man to build up storage of food during the years, the 7 years of abundance, so that you have food to sustain you during the 7 years of famine. And let that man be responsible for storing up the food and for also the handing out the food as necessary during the famine, so that it will last. And Pharaoh's response unto Joseph is, no better person to do this than you. So Pharaoh elevates Joseph to this governor type position in Egypt and puts him in charge of this. Joseph's interpretation of the dream and the wisdom that he shows in his answer unto Pharaoh brings him favor with Pharaoh. And now he is elevated in the position and in the place that God has given him and has called him to be, so that he can bring salvation unto his family. So that during the famine, there would be a place that people can go to in order to experience and have salvation. That was why he was put there. He had to go through all these things. Every single bit of his journey that he went through played a part in getting Joseph in the spot he needed to be in order to fulfill what he has been called to do. Had he gave up at any moment in time and quit doing what was right, he would not have made it to the governor of Egypt. He wouldn't have been positioned before Pharaoh and to be elevated by Pharaoh. So let's look at Galatians chapter 6 and verse 7. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, this he will also reap. For the one who sows to his own flesh will from the flesh reap corruption. But the one who sows to the Spirit will from the Spirit reap eternal life. And let us not lose heart in doing good, for in due time we will reap if we do not grow weary. So then, while we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, and especially to those who are of the household of faith. So here is Paul speaking and saying, look, a man is going to reap what he sows. Joseph was going to reap what he sowed. Okay, so however he chose to act while in Potiphar's house, while in the jail, that was what he was going to reap. Joseph remained faithful. He remained doing that which was right. You could say he continued to walk in that which is of the Spirit and not giving into the own flesh or into that which was sinful, that which was not right, giving into hate and bitterness and unforgiveness. He could have had hate and bitterness and anger and jealousy towards his brothers for what they did. He could have had hate and anger and unforgiveness towards Potiphar for being falsely accused and thrown into the jail. But he did not. He chose, in order to do that which was good, he continued to walk in love and be a person of kindness and gentleness and faithfulness, even in the jail, to a point to where he had favor upon him and he was elevated to these positions of leadership, which speaks of his character and how he was acting and portraying himself. So Paul tells us, do not lose heart in doing good. Joseph never lost heart in doing good. And in due time, Joseph reaped from doing good because he did not grow weary. And it's the same for us. If we do not grow weary, in due time, we will reap that which is good. Had Joseph at any moment in time on his journey grown weary in doing that which was good, then he wouldn't have reaped the goodness that was before him. It was him enduring through the process and what he needed to go through and not losing heart in doing good that he was able to reap the benefit and see the fulfillment of his dream. He could see the glory that was set before him. So let us not grow weary in doing good. So let us do good to all people. I believe that even though Joseph was being mistreated every time he turned around, Joseph was doing good to all people. So let us do good to all people. Show love and kindness and gentleness and self-control. We need to love our brothers, and no matter what we're going through, no matter where we are on the journey, like the journey Joseph went through, we need to do good to all people. And in doing good to all people, we will reap the goodness that is in front of us at the due time, at the right time. There was a right time for Joseph to stand before Pharaoh. There is a right time for the things that he has called us to do. And if we remain faithful in doing good in what we are called to do and in loving people and being good unto people, we will reap the goodness that is due to us at the right time. Let's look at what Yeshua says in Matthew chapter 24 and verse 9. Then they will deliver you to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations because of my name. So Joseph went through tribulation. He went through testing. He went through trial. We will go through testings. We will go through trials. We will experience things and paths along our journey just as Joseph did. Okay. How are we to respond? In verse 10, and at that time, many will fall away. Many will betray one another and hate one another. Many false prophets will arise and will deceive many. And because lawlessness is multiplied, most people's love will grow cold. So because of the testing, because of the trials, there will be those who will not be like Joseph, who remained faithful and doing good along his journey. There will be those who will fall away. And they will choose not to be good unto people, not to love people, but they will begin to hate people. And they will begin to walk in hate. They will have envy and jealousness and bitterness and unforgiveness towards others. And these emotions and feelings are going to drive them. And when these feelings begin to drive us, it's going to pull us away from where he is bringing us, and we're going to fall away. These feelings and emotions will lead us astray. There will be those who will come and speak of things that will deceive many away from that which is good. He has laid out before us, this is how you love people. He has given us his instructions to guide us on how to love him and love people. But there will be those who will come away and pull you away from these instructions on how you love people and how you show goodness to people and how you remain faithful and doing that which is right. And because they want to get rid of these instructions that instruct us on loving people and being good unto people and showing faithfulness and kindness and gentleness towards people, lawlessness will abound, where people will do whatever is right in their own eyes, meaning they will do whatever feels good unto them. So when you do that, what happens is when you don't feel like showing kindness to somebody, you're not going to show kindness. When you don't want to show forgiveness unto somebody, you're not going to show them forgiveness. You're not going to show love unto somebody if you don't want to show them love because it don't feel good to you. If you're giving in to what feels good unto you, then you will be led away and people's love will grow cold. And when love grows cold, that's when hate increases. So Yeshua goes on in verse 13 to say this, but the one who endures to the end, he will be saved. So it's the one who's able to endure to the end of the testing and the trials, who doesn't fall away from his commands, doesn't fall away from showing love and kindness and goodness unto people. But they hold to his righteousness and they hold to be faithful. These are going to be the ones who will be saved. Joseph's family was saved because Joseph endured through the testing and the trials of the tribulation that he went through. So he was saved and his family was saved. Had Joseph not endured unto the end, not only would his family not have been saved, but he would not have been saved. So let us run this race with endurance. Let us see it unto the end. He has given us his word. He has spoken things unto us, and he has shown us things, just as he gave unto Joseph, that we can use as fuel, something that we can put our confidence in so that we can continue to push through and not grow weary in doing good, knowing that in the end we will be saved. Well, hallelujah. We are so glad that you have joined us for this week's teaching. We will be back again next week with another teaching. So come back now, and shalom, y'all. Scripture quotations taken from LSB, Legacy Standard Bible, copyright 2021 by the Lockman Foundation, used by permission, all rights reserved, managed in partnership with 316 Publishing Incorporated, lsbible.org, and 316publishing.com.